push stop because it would not. And now we're good. Okay, 17. Somebody tell me what to do. Somebody here knows what to do. Like if you explain it, you learn way better. Go.
Well, you have to first figure out what kind of limit it is. And it's going to infinity.
So let's do this. One way to really test if you're understanding well is that I can jump from person to person, plus it gives you more chances to earn more extra credit. So he said we got to figure out x approaching infinity. We're good there. So we go.
Comparing terms.
Terms that. Yeah, important to say it completely.
Sorry.
It's okay. You just have to be precise. If you're not precise, you'll make mistakes. So we got to compare terms that adds. Somebody else? Go, Sarah.
So you find which thing will dominate everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Which
So which terms are you looking at?
I'm looking at e 3x.
Plus?
What do you mean? So plus
Yeah, they
right?
have to be terms that add. So you have to think of it as e to the 3x plus negative 2x to the 100 plus 3. So this time we have 3 terms that are adding. It doesn't matter how many. So of those 3 terms that are adding, somebody talk about it, which is going to dominate.
E to the 3x.
Right, that's memorized fact. We didn't really study that in this class. We just said memorize that this one will dominate. It will grow the fastest and overwhelm the other 2.
So if it has E, then it will always.
That's a little too simple. You gotta be more precise
I
again.
don't know what the exponent is.
Yeah, you gotta be
If
more
E to the
precise.
exponent.
So here's the way to think of it, in my opinion. And even this isn't guaranteed, okay, but it does seem to be enough for this class. That if you have e and the exponent of the e, remember e is just 2.7. So instead of e, you might have 5. Same rule, same logic. Either one of these is an exponential function. Okay, but you have, number to an exponent, and the exponent is increasingly positive. That means this is going to get really big. If you have a power function, and the value here of the base is increasingly positive, that will also get really big. But the exponential will grow much faster. So the exponential will dominate. Sorry, Maya, 1 second. So our top, okay, remember, what's the purpose of that? Somebody, Maya, please.
To help you find the y value.
To find a y value. What's the purpose of, okay, the bottom is going to be this. I think you're all okay with that. What's the purpose of this? Somebody help me. Please.
Still to find the y value.
Still to find the y value. So what's the difference between the 2 boxes if they're both for finding the y value? Please.
No, it's just apply the e to it.
True, but there's one other key. Doing great. Just keep track of your extra credit. There's a huge key as to why these are different. Go ahead.
Is it as x gets bigger and bigger, the other ones are?
You're on the right track. The idea that I don't want you to forget is these are both used to find y coordinates. This one can be used to find any y coordinate. What y coordinates can be found with this one?
As you're approaching infinity.
Only when x gets really, really big. That's it. You can't use it for other things.
Also another question. When E is going to a negative exponent, that goes to 0, right?
Right.
Okay.
So that's a really good time to make sure you understand this idea. And what you're doing, Cassie, is a great way to succeed in this class. You just keep probing for, okay, I think I got the concept, but what if this changed? Do I still understand the concept? So if this were the limit, as x were approaching negative infinity, well, now this thing here is e to an exponent that becomes increasingly negative. That will go to 0. So it will not dominate.
As E to the negative x power, it just goes to 0.
Yeah, the way I think of it is, I don't even think of it like this, to be honest, Cassidy. I just think of it as, I need to think about what is the exponent.
Okay.
Like what's happening, because I don't want them to fool me with something like, I don't know, this. I just want to think about what's the exponent going to do. Here, if x is approaching positive infinity, this whole thing will become increasingly negative. So this would become close to 0.
Yeah.
Over here, you have this. This is going to become increasingly positive.
If the limit is approaching
Negative infinity.
And
But that's why you can't just use quick rules. You got to understand the rule. Does that make sense?
wait, I don't get
You're
the
okay.
second part of that. So if x is approaching, I get the if x is approaching infinity, but then it goes e to the negative x power, then it will go to 0.
So I was saying if we have this situation,
Yeah.
and if x is becoming increasingly positive, this whole thing is going to become increasingly negative.
Yeah.
So this whole thing is going to become
0.
close to 0.
Yeah, I get that.
If I do this, well, the value that you're plugging in is negative already. Multiplied by the negative will change it to positive.
Okay.
So if x is approaching negative infinity, this whole thing will become increasingly positive.
Okay.
Therefore, this whole thing will become really, really big.
Okay.
So say you were, the limit was as x is approaching negative infinity, and it was just e to the straight x, positive x, then it would be getting closer to 0.
Perfect. So I'll just write it down again. What you said, Keegan, was that if you had e to the x, and x were approaching negative infinity, now you've got e to an exponent that is becoming increasingly negative. So the whole thing's going to go towards, so the y value, so this thing's going to head towards 0. Anybody else want to talk here? So back to the original problem. We have this for finding any y coordinate. We now have this one that works great to find the y value as long as x gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So now what do you do with that? Please.
Well, e to the 3x is getting so much bigger than 5x to the coordinate, so it's infinity.
Perfect. So the bottom actually is growing forever, so is the bottom. But because the top grows faster than the bottom, the whole thing heads towards infinity. Question, please.
If the bottom were to grow faster, would it be different?
Goes towards 0. Anybody else want to talk more on 17? Cool. Stop the video.